The last time we had a look at ballistics, we were having a look at 3 different .308 rounds of different bullet construction in order to compare and contrast how those different bullet constructions varied the terminal performance. This week we're going to be doing something similar, except I'm only going to be looking at one of those rounds. We're going to be having a look at the Geco Plus, which is Geco's big game round. What we're going to change this week is, instead of just shooting through a soft tissue medium, which we used the ballistic gel to simulate, we're going to be introducing bone. Now, of course, with a big game round, you're going to want something that can punch through bone and keep going into the engine room and cause that damage on the other side. If you were to shoot a substantial animal and hit bone with a fragmenting bullet, there's a very high possibility that you would end up with a lot of surface damage, but no deep penetration, which is what you need to bring the animal down. Simulating bone is actually quite difficult. Now, the best way to do it is obviously to get fresh bone from an animal that you've shot and embed it inside the gel. That, however, causes a few problems. Not only do you need a supply of fresh bones, but it will also contaminate the gel, which is something that we want to try and avoid. So what I've done in order to simulate shooting through bone is use some PVC piping, which has been cut into a half moon. Now, that may seem a little odd, but in actual fact the International Committee of the Red Cross used something very similar in their documents on wound ballistics in order to replicate the effect of a bullet smashing through bone. So given that it's good enough for them, I've taken that it's good enough for us. I've melted down the gel, inserted my half piece of pipe about 1 inch in, and that allows us to shoot through a small amount of gel simulating flesh first before it hits the bone and then carries on into the rest of the block of gel. Now, hopefully what we should find is that this big game round should perform almost the same as shooting just through the soft tissue medium. I'm expecting this to punch a nice hole through the plastic pipe and carry on going, giving us very similar penetration to before and also similar weight retention. Now, I would expect the weight retention to have gone down. It seems very unlikely that after hitting something so hard that you wouldn't lose a little bit more of the body of the bullet, but we'll see what happens with that. And hopefully, all going well, we should be able to provide a very visual picture like we did last time, and then we can compare some of the measurements that I took and really see how this bullet performs when shooting through something hard like bone. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to do this same test with the other 2 bullets from Geco, and we can see how important bullet construction is when we're taking it that step further and not just shooting through something which is soft. .2473 feet per second. According to the box here, 50 meters out, 2494. So that's pretty close, and that's just one round. To get a proper average, we'd have to fire maybe 10 rounds. So that's pretty pleasing. What's on the box is actually what it's producing. Let's go and see what the gel says now. Well, I have to say that this is a very pleasing result. This is almost exactly what I thought it should look like. I do, however, have one small problem, and that is a problem that I've caused, in that I just assumed shooting through the pipe that the penetration would probably only be as much as this full block, given that last time it was only a little bit more. I was wrong, and I have no bullet to show you. It has actually come out the back of the block here, and I can't imagine that it would have gone very far, but enough for me not to be able to find it. So we can do the rest of the analysis, but when it comes to the actual bullet itself, when I shoot the Express next week, I will have to redo this experiment, and then at least I'll be able to compare the two side by side. So we'll have to actually leave the bullet deformation aside for this analysis, and we'll tackle that a little bit later. But if we have a look at the pipe, we can see that it's completely shattered. In actual fact, I've got some bits in my hand here which were lying on the ground, which have been forced out of the bottom of the block. There's another piece just stuck in the gel here. If we have a look along the wound tract, visually it seems very similar to when I shot this just through the gel block. I'll have to take the measurements to see exactly what the story is, but we can see an escalating wound channel right through most of the block, and it's carried a lot of the fragments of the pipe through it, which is exactly what we see in reality. If you clip a rib and catch some bone, you end up with those bone fragments sprayed through the carcass of the animal. And if we look right at the end here, you can see a little circular disc of the pipe. Now that must be where the bullet initially hit it, and it's just been dropped and left behind almost right at the end of the block. The performance of the Plus has certainly been very pleasing. We've got excellent consistency as well. If we have a look at the front of the block, we've got the same nose break-off that we had when we did this experiment the first time. As we follow the wound tract along, we can see some of the petals of the copper jacket breaking off about 2/3 of the way, and there's another petal just broken off towards the end here. What is going to be very interesting is once we have a comparison side by side. When I do this experiment next time, we're looking at the Express, and I repeat this so that we can actually have the end bullet result in our hand and see how that compares to the first time we did this without the pipe. It's really going to tell the story of this bullet, which is designed specifically to perform with this kind of criteria. So all that's left to do now is for me to pack up, go back, and get back to the arduous task of melting all this gel down.